It all started in my backyard on Harding Avenue in Venice, California. From there I hit the blacktop of my elementary school, then along to the gyms, fields, and courts throughout the west side of Los Angeles. Soon I wasn't just playing, I was coaching and directing, and before I knew it, I was promoting and announcing around the country. I was getting to hang out with these great athletes, witness some legendary games, and really enjoy some iconic venues. From my earliest memories of Coach John Wooden leading UCLA to NCAA basketball titles, it inspired my family, friends, and me to organize the world's largest backyard volleyball tournament in my own backyard. Eventually, I was appointed a position on the AAU Sullivan Award Committee that recognizes the nation's top amateur athlete. Well, it's been quite a trip around the sports block. I'm Denny Lennon, and this is Sports Stories. So, welcome to the inaugural season of Sports Stories. I'm a third-generation, Venice, California-born LA sports fan who spent my life playing, coaching, and administrating sports. This season on my podcast, I focus on one of the pillars of American sports, one that I've been part of since 1994, the Amateur Athletic Union of the United States. So, back in 1994, when William Jefferson Clinton was in his first presidential term, Ace of Base was a thing in music. Seinfeld was a top TV show. Southern California was hit by a 6.7 earthquake that centered in Northridge. You know, besides the earthquake, the sport of football shook up the LA area. Both the Raiders and the Rams played their last games in Los Angeles, well, at least for a while. My football hero from my youth, the ex-USC Heisman Trophy winner, the pro football star that was the first to rush for 2,000 yards in a season. Yep, you know Nordberg from the Naked Gun movies, that O.J. Simpson guy, whose poster I had on my wall as a kid. Yeah, he was on trial for double murder. In 1994, I was a 30-year-old teacher, coach, and athletic director at a K-8 Catholic school in Venice called St. Mark. I would teach PE, watch the yards at recess and lunch, and then coach the sports teams after school. I was also a stage announcer at that time for the WPVA, Women's Pro Beach Volleyball. In the spring, I'd hop on a plane each Friday to get to some city that was hosting the Coors Light WPVA Tour. I'd call the center court games all day Saturday and Sunday. I'd get a little TV time on Prime Network when I did the intros for the finals. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zilker Park in Austin, Texas for the final, that kind of thing. And so after I did the awards, I'm back on a red eye to make sure I was on time for school Monday morning. Didn't want to make sister upset by missing recess duty. It was through Catholic school ball in LA, what is known as the CYO, that I met Gino Grajeda. He held a similar position as mine at Mary Star of the Sea Elementary School in San Pedro. Some of the Catholic school names were awesome. We always especially enjoyed those big games against the likes of Precious Blood School from the Rampart Village area. Well, as fate would have it, one day while I was announcing a WPVA event, Gino, who news to me was a referee for the WPVA, asked me if I'd like to start a beach volleyball juniors program with them for the AAU. I kind of knew what the AAU was, and I was pretty sure it'd be more affordable for my students than indoor club volleyball, so I was all in. Starting the only program for junior beach volleyball in the country may be a very LA way to get involved with the AAU, but it was not unlike many people's entry into the AAU. The Amateur Athletic Union has provided an opportunity for athletes, coaches, and promoters to take part in sports for over 130 years. Yep, 130 years. It was founded in 1888 at the New York Athletic Club. The organization provided a structure for amateur athletics. It established standards and uniformity in amateur sports. The AAU was, in effect, the primary force in the Olympic movement. It worked very closely with the United States Olympic Committee. Fast forward 90 years later to 1978, the United States Congress passed the Amateur Sports Act, which repositioned the AAU towards primarily operating youth sports. Today, the AAU remains a leader in the sports world, with over 700,000 members and 150,000 volunteers in 41 sports, managing the 55 districts that comprise the union. While many made their impact on the organization in the early years, James E. Sullivan, at the turn of the 20th century, stood out as a driving force. Sullivan, a native New Yorker who died in 1914, distinguished himself as a sports publisher and sporting goods owner while also founding the Public School Athletic League of New York, in addition to organizing the Outdoor Recreation League. As one of the founding members of the AAU, he served as secretary and then as president from 1903 to 1909. It was his presentation on the growth of American athletics in 1908 that captured my attention. You can of course find this in the Spalding Athletic Report in the Library of Congress, just in case you're into those kind of deep dives. Anyhow, his words then ring true today. Quote, "The present healthy condition of athletics is due solely to the fact that in America, those who are following athletics recognize that in order to succeed, there must be organization, there must be rules, and there must be law and order. Without a governing body to control the sport is sure to die." James E. pumping up the bass. Anyways, in 1930, the AAU established the James E. Sullivan Award in his honor. The AAU Sullivan Award remains a coveted award to this day, given annually to the best amateur athlete in the country. Jumping forward to 1994, at the first AAU Junior Beach Volleyball National Championship at Cabrillo Beach in San Pedro, I get a chance to meet the then national chair of AAU volleyball, Roger Goudy. Roger, from the Cleveland area, came to San Pedro that day like a boss. He rolled in like Detective Rick Hunter, played by ex-Rams defensive end Fred Dreyer, would roll up on a crime scene. In the show Hunter, you just got to look it up on IMDb. Anyway, Roger's hard work and leadership would lead the sport of volleyball to eventually becoming the #1 sport in the union. As Coach Wooden would note, there is no substitute for work. Worthwhile things come from hard work and careful planning. In 1994, as fate would have it, Roger was also the national secretary of the AAU, and today he is the president and chief executive officer of the AAU, a leader who, among many other accomplishments while serving the union, has returned the AAU Sullivan Awards to its birthplace at the New York Athletic Club. How beautiful is that? Well, with all of that said, from the Dialogue Studios at LAX, I'm proud to have as my first guest on Sports Stories the president and CEO of the AAU from the great state of Ohio, Dr. Roger Goudy. Okay, it's always nice to be in the Dialogue Studios at LAX. Thanks for coming, Dr. Goudy.
Thanks for having me.
Right on, Raj. So one of the things I'm always interested in is, in effect, like origin stories and, how people got to where they are.
Okay.
And so now, born in Ohio.
Correct.
What city?
Ashtabula.
Ashtabula, yeah. So
River of many fish.
all right. Now, middle school, high school, is that where you started getting involved in sports?
Probably closer to middle school. Back then, you didn't really have a lot of youth athletics.
Right.
And most kids at that point in time probably started their careers in middle school.
Yeah, and would your first exposure to athletics and stuff been both on your block, but also maybe PE classes or something like that?
Yeah, a little bit of that. And back then, you had a lot of kids playing outside. You'd pick up games in baseball and have 6 guys, 3 on one side, 3 on the other. You close right field. You caught
Yep.
for your team.
I remember that.
The pitcher was first base, and all those things. So it was a little bit different era then. But you kind of used a lot of imagination.
Now, being a SoCal boy, I grew up, sports heavy and stuff, and loved it. And then as an adult going to Ohio, I was always just fascinated at Ohio's love of sport, but also how it just weaved itself into the community.
Yeah, it's big in Ohio, especially spending 42 years in public education and my last 8 in a school district that's kind of a rural district where on Friday night everybody's at the football game and everybody pre-games and everybody goes after the game, whether you're winning or losing.
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
so much
what they
fun.
do.
There's such a great vibe that's going on.
It's still that way.
So when did you start to feel like maybe athletics was something you wanted to take a little further? Was there a team you were on, or?
Yeah, it was probably the late 60s, and I was at Ashtabula Harbor High School, and I did some, actually an AAU competition. It was a pentathlon at Winter Field, and it was 5 events, and I finished second. So back then you had to go, to get an AAU card, you had to go downtown Cleveland, which is about 50 miles away, and buy a card. I think it was 25 cents at the time.
Is that right?
And you bought it at Room 8 City Hall, and you go back and they let you compete in the event.
So that would have been like did they execute this pentathlon? Was there actual operators of the AAU, or was it like through?
They were like we have today. It was based a lot of volunteers, and this was pre-Amateur Sports Act time. So
wow, that's
AAU
cool.
was pretty much picking all the Olympic teams back then. So that was back in
You're ninth grade, 10th grade, or
probably
younger than that?
8th, 9th.
Is that right? So you
yeah.
did all right, and you're like, well,
Yeah,
maybe
did all right.
Was there a particular adult that took an interest, or somebody who guided you that to go out for more teams, anything like that?
Yeah, we had a football coach, Jim Orr, who was a great guy. He came in from, I believe he moved to Ohio from Maryland, and he took over a losing program. And then my junior year of football at the high school, we were 6-2-1, and my senior year we were undefeated. So we had a.
So that'll set a fire.
Yeah, he did, and I got a full ride for football. And
now I'm always interested. Like, do you ever think like how your life might have been different had there not been that adult there that kind of that said, hey,
tremendously different. Tremendously different, because I grew up in a pretty poor neighborhood and a poor family, because my dad passed away when I was very young, and my mom ended up having to go to work and support 4 kids. So it was kind of my way out of poverty. And I'm always thankful to the people that were there, like Coach Orr, that kind of guided me in the right direction, because there was a lot of opportunities to go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like this Coach Orr had an effect on a lot of, because I still see some of your friends coming around from that same football team, right?
They do, and we kind of maintained a bond for a few years there. When you go to college and you raise your family, you kind of separate and go your own ways, but we've kind of reconnected. And they got a group called the Ancient Mariners out in Ashtabula now that I'm a member of, that I hardly ever attend meetings, but when I'm in town I try to meet up with those guys, and I try to share the experiences I have and share some of the things we're doing, because they're very important to me, and they're important to what I've become.
That's awesome. Speaking of which, I failed as a dad right here. Our show producer is my daughter, Sienna.
I think I know that girl.
Yeah, Sienna. All right, she'll just sit over there in the corner.
She has pink hair, doesn't she?
She'll sit over there in the corner. So now the next step, high school. Now I'd imagine you got recognized in high school some way, somehow.
Yeah, I was very, very fortunate to be on a good team. When you're on a good team, you get a little more recognition, and I made all city, all league, all county, and basketball.
You played other sports?
Yeah, basketball, football, and track.
Okay.
And then I did summer track with AAU. So
the pentathlon led to
summer. Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah.
So you kept your AAU card. So that would have been from the 60s all the way to now. You've been an AAU member.
I've been an AAU member.
That something else?
Yeah, a long time.
It was also a long time since a decision for college was pressing.
I actually had a full ride to Montana State University, but prior to that, it's maybe a boring story to most people, but I was actually offered a full ride to Marshall University. And at the time I was shy, and they wanted you to write an autobiography about yourself. So that kind of sat on my desk at home, and I never wrote it. Well, then I got an offer from Montana State University, back then it was 4-year scholarships. So I got a full 4-year scholarship, and the guy that was recruiting me was a guy by the name of Joe Tiller.
That's the same Joe Tiller who later became the head coach at Wyoming and then Purdue. Tiller was the first of many people Goudy would encounter who went on to great success in football. And Goudy's decision to spurn Marshall and choose Montana State might have been life-saving. Much of the Marshall football team later perished in a plane crash.
I would have been on that plane had I written the autobiography. Yeah, it's funny. I kept the
isn't that so?
I kept the thing, the paperwork, and I showed it to my kids, and they couldn't believe it. And we went to see We Are Marshall. And
yeah,
I said,
sure. I could have been on that plane.
I could have been on that plane.
Man.
Yeah, kind of bizarre.
But you chose Montana State.
Yeah, and back then I was young and dumb and in love, and so I went out there. I didn't realize if Montana was 2 miles from Ohio or 2,000 miles from Ohio.
Right.
And you didn't have the internet. You didn't have the cell phones. And so I was a girl I was dating in high school, and I was homesick as heck. And at the end of, I think it was fall quarter, I came home for Christmas vacation, never went back. I transferred to Kent State.
And that brought Goudy close to his second brush with tragedy. He was on campus at Kent State on May 4, 1970. when the National Guard troops shot and killed 4 students protesting the Vietnam War.
It was a tough time because you had the war in Vietnam.
Of course.
And at the time, I believe what kind of stimulated this was Nixon had said he wasn't going to go into Cambodia.
That's right.
Then he went into Cambodia, and probably for good reasons. I don't know what the reasons were. I wasn't really following it that closely. But it upset a lot of people. And especially back then, you had not the draft, but the lottery.
Oh, yeah.
And if you remember how the lottery worked, when I was in Montana, I had a college deferment, and it was by birth date. My lottery number when I was in Montana with the deferment was, I think, 360 out of 365 days. So I was clear, but it didn't count.
Sure.
When the next year they decided to drop the college deferment, and my number was like 117. Well, it went up to 110 that year, or else I'd have been in Vietnam.
And that freed up Roger to focus on football and studies at Kent State, where he played alongside some future notables.
On that team that I was redshirting on, the middle linebacker at the time when I got there was actually the defensive end, was a guy by the name of Jack Lambert.
Jack Lambert.
And actually he shares my birthday. His birthday's July 8th. All right. And so Dr. Adamley, Mike Adamley, who was an all-pro middle linebacker for the Cleveland Browns, he talked to Don James, who came in as the head coach.
Don James, legendary coach out west as well.
Yep, and he told James to stand Lambert up, and the rest is history.
And he became, wow.
And on that same team, the strong safety was Nick Saban, who's coaching at Alabama.
And some sports fans
might know who that is. Some people might know who he is. And on the same team was Gary Pinkel, the coach of Missouri.
So now that tragedy happens, and and again, I'm always fascinated by that part of athletics. Is it really gives opportunity for communities to come back together. It's not just that they're focused on something else, but they're doing something in a positive nature.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think that the big thing there, I credit a guy by the name of Mike Lude, who was the athletic director that ended up leaving Kent and going to Washington, and then bringing Don James with him. But when I went there in the fall of '70, it was. Puddington was the coach, and they fired him at the end of that year. So I redshirted a whole year under Puddington.
And then Don James came in.
And so he changed that culture.
And then you graduated from Kent State.
I did. That's one of many degrees.
Yeah. And so then it's time to find a job.
Actually, yeah. I actually went out and I was teaching. I taught for probably 6 or 7 years, and I took a sabbatical and went out to Idaho to get my master's degree, my first master's in sport and recreation management. So. And then
you brought back to the Cleveland area or the Ashtabula area?
I came back to actually Warrensville Heights.
And then Warrensville Heights is where we pick you up. And if I'm not mistaken, you get involved. How did you get involved with the gymnastics group at that point?
It's kind of funny because I was the defensive coordinator on the football team.
Of course.
And I coached.
They're going to put you in everything they can.
Yeah. And then I coached track and field as a field events coach. And our team, I think in 1978, won the AA state championship. I had a kid that was a state champion shot putter and discus thrower. And so we had tremendous success, but we had a lot of good kids. And I also coached youth wrestling. Well, some of the kids, I taught elementary phys ed, some of the kids wanted to do gymnastics. Well, at the time, back 1974, 75, there wasn't a lot of African Americans in gymnastics. So we were like the first African American gymnastics team in the country.
Is that right?
Yeah, we went from 6 kids.
And they came to you and said like, hey, we want to do this. Did they?
Yeah, they saw
because maybe the Olympics or something.
I think we did it as part of a unit in class, and so at the time,
you never know when you're going to plant the seeds, do you?
Yeah, and at the time I said, well, I have to learn how to do this or learn how to teach it at least. So I went to a guy next door in Shaker Heights, and he taught me at night how to coach gymnastics. And so my program of 6 ended up being 342 in about 3 years.
Wait. All right, so you got your 6.
Yeah.
Now you got to compete.
Now we got to compete.
And so this is what then led you as an adult administrator, so to speak, to the AAU, back to the AAU. So the road comes back around.
Correct, and that's what got me.
Okay, how did you go get this team sanctioned as an AAU team?
Well, there was some rule that AAU came up with, and I think it was because of my kids, because again we had no equipment. So we were doing, like, we would learn balance beam on a line on the floor.
Sure.
We would learn floor exercise. We had, like, I think 6 little mats, and they'd have to put the mats where they thought they were going to do their tricks, and they'd be bonking their heads on the floor all the time. We learned uneven bars out on the playground equipment, and vaulting. We had a horse. We had a horse.
Oh, you had a horse. Okay.
So we obviously our best
So you got
event,
good at that.
Our best event was vaulting.
Yeah, you got good at that.
All my kids did vaulting.
Okay.
And then so AAU came up with, and it wasn't the AAU, I found out later, it was really an individual or a couple of individuals that didn't want us to be in it. So these 2 individuals.
So you did face some resistance in.
Tremendous.
You faced some resistance.
Tremendous resistance.
Not certainly at a fundamental level through the organization, but there was just some individuals that were.
People wouldn't come into our gym. People wouldn't come and do workshops for us. Matter of fact, Joe Gurr and I, our first.
You said Joe Gurr, he's the second vice president, but he's also Ohio guy.
He used to own Great Lakes Gymnastics in Avon Lake, and one of the largest clubs in the state of Ohio.
And that's where you met him.
I met him, I don't know if it was Great Lakes Gymnastics at the time or another club that he may have been running. I think it was Great Lakes, actually, but it was kind of in its infancy. And he'd come out and work with my kids. And
here's what's great. Like, if I'm shooting a movie or a documentary or something, this is, I might have something to lead up, but this is a pivotal point to me.
Okay.
You're a young guy.
Yeah.
You're trying to get these kids that you have an opportunity to compete. You got this other guy, and now we flash forward this many years later to today, day, and one's the president and the other's the second vice president, and you're still moving kids forward, you're just doing it in a different way.
Yep.
That's something else.
And he's the godfather to one of my kids.
Isn't that something else? All right, so then
But
you were able to get going there, get some
was,
training.
At the time, you got to remember, and it's hard to sometimes go back in time and look at these things.
Sure.
But at the time, we weren't accepted. And when I say we, me and the African-American kids I was coaching, and you'd go into a gym and, like the AAU at the time, I thought was making a rule that said you had to do 2 events. Well, because we only had one piece of equipment, everybody did vaulting.
Right.
So what they were doing, saying all 342 of your kids can't come, but maybe 10 can that could do more than one event. So I just thought that wasn't fair. So I went to the national convention in Chicago.
And that's where you
That's
jumped in.
That's where I started.
This is where the political
That's where I
animal
started.
got us first.
That's where I started.
Taste of it. Okay.
And we changed the rule.
So so did you go on your own dime up to Chicago?
I did. I did.
Look at you.
I did. And the unfortunate thing, the reality was there. I always talk about those old guys that were in the room, and back then they smoked cigars and stuff in the meetings. And I went into the room and I said, I want to change this rule. I started spouting off like some young and dumb person would. And you had a piece of paper back then that had a number on it, 90234, and that gave you the right to vote in that meeting. So I went in, and one of those guys made a motion to suspend with 90234, and I seconded the motion. So then we voted on it. And I voted myself out of the meeting. So now being young and dumb again, and not having the composure, maybe I have a little bit better of now. I kind of lost my composure in the meeting and went out and said a few choice things about these guys in the hallway. And a lady by the name of Frances Kozubsky comes up to me in the hall, and she slaps me in the chest with a code book, and she said, if you're going to play at this level, you better learn the rules.
Better learn the rules.
So I went to my room, I read the code book cover to cover, found out that they had made a mistake, went back to the meeting, changed the rule, but those guys, for 30 years, those guys
they hold that against you, didn't
they? They thought, they said they were laughing so hard under their breath, they couldn't believe I seconded the motion.
Well, so by about the mid-'80s, that starts, but also you're getting, you're climbing the ranks in AAU. You're starting to become more prominent in your district.
And at the local Lake Erie district, yes, and also at the national level, I was on like the swimming committee, I was on the gymnastics committee, and then somebody talked me into running for national chairman for the sport of baseball.
Okay, and that's around 1990. Something like that.
Yep, right around there. Yep,
it's around there. So now we've caught up to you through the 80s. And about 90, you take over base. Now, baseball in good shape, bad shape at that time for AAU?
At the time for the whole country, they had 265 kids.
Boy, they could barely get a game going.
Yeah,
Jeez almighty.
It was incredible.
Okay.
And it was almost comical because at the convention, which was in Nashville, Tennessee, the national chairman at the time was from a city called Tullahoma, Tennessee. And that was the same place where a lady by the name of Jane Puckett.
I know Jane.
Jane was a legend in AAU, and she happened to be walking down the hall, and I came out and I said, Jane, the national chairman's baseball's from your hometown. not here. What are we going to do? We got to get this sport going. So she walks back into the room. She grabs a third person. She goes, I move that Roger become the national chairman. The other girl seconded it. We voted.
This is the part. I think on some levels, I often say like the AAU kind of operates, and I'm sure that's when it was founded.
Yeah.
It was founded not unlike how our government's founded.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes on at local levels, and then you move up to, in effect, state levels, and then perhaps to national levels.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff that happens down in Mayberry, boom, all of a sudden you're in charge.
Yep. And
because you show a little competency.
And that's what happened. And so in 3 years, I was the one that initiated back before this time. They didn't have odd age divisions in baseball. It was 18 and under, 16 and under, 14 and 12. And I asked the question, not knowing baseball, so why don't you do 11s, 13s, 15s, and 17s? And people said, we don't do that in baseball. And I said, why not? Why not?
Don't ever say why not.
Yeah, why not? And
so this is the way we do things.
So back then, I ran the first 11s, 13s, 15s, and 17s and lost my butt financially, but we kept going with it. And all of a sudden, people started to like the concept. And so they'd go with us at 11, stay with us at 12, go with us at 13.
That's right.
And our numbers just exploded, and we became huge in baseball.
Sienna, are you seeing a theme here at all about this guy? We're about to catch him now heading to we're seeing a theme, aren't we?
Yep.
Yep.
Building programs.
Yeah, this guy. This guy. All right. So you've had some success in gymnastics, certainly.
Yep.
And now this is just on your AAU side of things.
Yep.
Because concurrently you're in administration and education.
Yes. At the time, I was a central office administrator for the Warrensville schools. Yes.
Right. So so that's happening over here.
Yep.
You got a young family.
Yep.
They're playing a lot of sports.
Yep.
Right. You know, and so then that's happening, and then okay, so baseball does fine.
Baseball's doing great.
And so you say, hey,
time to move on.
Here comes the president. He goes, I like what you do with baseball.
Yep.
Now this is around 92.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And tell me about. I think if the legend's right, you're going to inherit a program with around 14,000 athletes, something like that.
About 3,000.
Okay.
About 3,000.
I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah,
3,000.
yeah,
And
yeah.
now, just so if I was to fast forward to 2020 or 2019, we're looking at about 150, 160,000.
Close, pushing 160, but we were
Okay.
at the time.
All right, so
we were
92
the 35th largest sport, 35th out of 41.
35 out of how many?
Out of 41.
Boy,
and
you're not going to qualify that way.
This year for the first time, volleyball is the largest sport in the AAU,
Unreal.
and we surpassed boys basketball for the first time in 130 years.
Wow, look at that. Okay, so 92. You did
92.
3,000, and
Yep.
you got not much operating capital.
Correct.
And what's your first move? Like what do you do?
Well, we were at the time.
Did you have somewhat of a template from baseball?
I did, and
Okay.
then again, it's getting people that know what they're doing.
Sure.
'Cause I like I said, I'm a good builder. I'm not a good manager. I like to kind of stimulate ideas, and you get people into the sport that are passionate about it, that
Sure.
really want to do something for kids. And I think if you come into sports at the basic level where you're trying to help kids, you're going to be successful.
Well, I would also say, I mean, up and through their 18, if you keep on track with the intent being, let's move forward, let's help you move forward in your life. If you can keep that, I think decisions
Yep.
are made a little more clear.
Absolutely.
And that sounds like we're just trying to say, oh, everybody, do the best for kids and stuff. However, I think if that's your clear motive, like let's help them get better, be better people, move forward in their life,
Yep.
that you'll find that your programs grow.
Yep.
And that
agree.
you create that kind of goodwill that leads towards great things.
Yeah,
I mean, I've watched it happen.
Oh,
and,
sure.
And I think you got to keep that at the forefront of whoever's working for you.
I totally
Just remember what's important.
I totally agree.
Who are you
got-
serving?
Exactly. Who's your customer?
Yeah.
And in most cases in our business, it's the kids. Even though we say we're sports for all forever, 90% of our youth.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's this phenomenal rise that's going on. So that's 92, and then
Well,
two
prior
things.
to that, I got married. I got married to my lovely wife, Christine. We jumped right over that.
No, what? Oh, well, I would.
That was a big day in my life. And
yeah,
then
you know.
88, I had my son, 88 had our son Brian.
So no, that was 88.
And at Brian in 90,
Okay, look
I had our
out.
son Kyle. And then
Okay.
92, our son Brett. And in 95, I had my baby girl, girl Taylor.
All right.
And
So
they're
all of this
are
is
doing-
happening while you're being an administrator
and doing AAU.
and doing AAU. This is what people
and
do.
coaching for sports.
Yes, I know these days, Rich. I know these days. So, but also what happened in '94, a couple other things happened. That's when you and I met. But besides that, you were also elected to a national secretary.
I was national secretary of one of the 5 national officers.
So there's 5 national officers.
And I was one of them. Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of explained some of the structure prior, but there's 5 national officers, and then the sports have sport committee heads at a national level, and they have their own boards, and then it goes to the district level to operate said sports.
56 districts.
Yeah, 56 districts. So this meteoric rise is happening. 94, as I mentioned, that's when we meet, and we're going to get
Cabrillo
beach
Beach.
volleyball started in Cabrillo Beach, and beautiful Cabrillo Beach. And the only reason we did that is because we couldn't get another beach. So we're down there at Cabrillo Beach, and that's the first time you and I met. But at that time, I think you said something to me, which was along the same line. Everything starts somewhere.
That's right.
You got to get it going. And
Because
if you get it going,
you and Gino Grajeda,
me and Gino,
were disappointed because you only had 16 teams.
Right.
And I flew out from Ohio, and I watched it. I thought you guys knew what you were doing. I thought you were passionate about what you did.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great concept for the sport of volleyball. And I said, well, why? We're starting here. You got to start
keep going.
somewhere.
Yeah,
and
I
look
was,
at it now, 440
I just
teams.
remember going, who's here? And
Yeah.
the
Yeah, who
national
is that
chairman,
guy?
I go,
Who is that guy?
What did he drive? No, he's from Cleveland. I was like, what the heck? All right. So yeah, Raj. So now I want to go from there to here. How does 3,000 athletes make the next leap, and then the next leap? You know, because getting into 150,000, you could just say that, but those steps in between.
I think the things we do differently is I'm a firm believer, from whether it be education or sports management, if you're going to give somebody the responsibility to do something, you need to give them the authority to do something. I think my best role is at 30,000 feet. When I get down to the weeds, I tend to mix it up and screw it up. So I try to stay above the fray, watch what people are doing, and try to support them when things are going bad, and try to encourage them to do better all the time, because you got to allow people to fail. I think that's the biggest failure anybody has in any management position. They want to jump right in every time there's a mistake or something goes wrong. People learn more from failing than they do from. I remember 90% of my failures. Most of the things I've done correctly, I don't remember when I did them or how I did them.
What were some of the things you see as a growth pattern, or like maybe some of the failures you made in volleyball, or whatever, leading it that led to the next growth to the next growth?
Yep, I think sometimes we try to. We believed in people that we didn't do our due diligence. We right after the Davis tournament, they moved,
which was a massive tournament.
You remember that?
In Northern California?
It was unbelievable.
And it
moved to
everybody knew
Reno,
about it.
I think,
Moved to
right?
Reno. Everybody knew about Davis. They
We
even
went-
called it Davis.
Correct.
Yep.
And we went in, and we thought we could go into that space.
Indoor volleyball.
Correct.
Indoor volleyball, yes.
And do it. And we probably didn't do our due diligence, and most of those teams were loyal to the tournament, not to the city.
Okay, so I'm going to fast forward a little bit. I'm going to jump. Yeah. Okay, so now you host in Orlando, a massive event that's going to close in on 3,000 teams.
Correct.
But I think one of the lessons you may have learned was people liked going to Davis. They knew the hotel they're going to stay in. They knew the route to get there. They knew the ins and outs. They could do all of this other stuff. And by keeping it in one place, it facilitated growth. And I would say you probably...
Absolutely.
Okay.
We learned from our mistakes along the way, and that was one of them.
That was one of them,
And not ashamed to admit, it would cost us $5,000 or something for facilities we had rights to and stuff. But we learned that you need, people are loyal to the event. And so what we try to do now, we try to make our national championships, at least in volleyball, more of an event than a national championship. Because when you have 2,805 teams, you're only going to have, in 36 divisions, 36 national champions. So you either say the rest of them go home losers, or you do things for them, water park parties.
Did you learn some of those lessons early on when you were doing it, or were you just like, trying to
I think I learned early.
Stay alive.
I learned early on, Denny, that you got to think about the constituents, which in this case are the kids and the parents. The coaches come for one reason, but the kids and the parents are the ones I think that kind of influence the club directors in coming back again and again and again, because they got to have a good experience. Most people like me and like you, you spend your family vacations when you're growing up and you're teaching, your kids are young.
Yeah.
You spend your family vacations going to these different sporting events.
Yeah, and you
So
want, it's not just going to be
more
about
than
the game.
just
That's right.
more than just play volleyball.
We're going to jump forward to 2014.
Correct.
Because you've been growing, because up until then, you make an alliance with some Midwest volleyball directors in volleyball,
JVA.
which certainly helps
Correct.
growth.
Correct.
And so now, and then you've anchored in Orlando because
Correct.
you're part of the team that creates an alliance with Disney.
Correct.
So that was what year?
It's 22 years ago. So
Okay.
22 years
So
ago.
around 98.
Yeah, around 98.
Okay.
We started, actually, probably 97, we started talking with folks at Disney, because at the time, they had a
Which is,
concept.
sorry to interrupt you, but I remember I asked you, I watched the movie Race.
Yes.
And I said, do you think the most important national convention the AAU's ever had, now an organization been around since 1888, do you think the one was that voted on whether or not they should go to the
Berlin.
Nazi games,
Go to
right?
Berlin, yeah.
And they voted to go. And I said, do you think that's the
Brundage.
most important one ever? And you said, well, either that one or the one that
after the
ratified
Amateur Sports
Disney,
Act. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Right? Okay,
Yep,
so
yep,
now
yep.
here we are trying to decide that you're part of this team that's going to decide whether or not to align with Disney.
Yeah.
Is this
well,
right?
Yeah, and keep in mind, the part of the rest of that story is in 1978, Congress stepped in and broke up the AAU because AAU at that time, a dozen or 15 of the Olympic sports were all picked by the AAU. And at the time, Congress was breaking up AT&T into all the baby bells. They intervened in amateur sports and said, okay, AAU, you can be the national governing body for one sport, not 41. And so
up until that time, from like
we-
1888, I mean, 1888, they're codifying sports for athletic clubs, but then they moved right into the Olympics. They're running all the trials for most of the Olympic sports.
Yep.
Okay.
And so when they did that, one by one, what we called our sport committees left USA Swimming became USA Swimming.
Sure.
Track and field became, trivia question, what did track and field become?
They became USTA.
Nope.
What did they become?
Became TAC, the Athletic Congress. And then they switched to USTA.
Okay, all right.
So when they left, they became TAC. They stayed in Indianapolis, but a lot of them went out to Colorado Springs, and that's when USOC and Colorado Springs got its advent in 78 as part of that. Well, at the time,
did you see something in Colorado Springs growth that you recognized? You went, wow, sports is a business. Because it's kind of interesting. Colorado Springs was kind of a out of the way place, but all of a sudden everybody knows where that is.
Exactly. And again, now keep in mind what they were talking about at the time. They weren't talking about the base of the pyramid. Everybody was talking about the tip of the pyramid.
Very good.
They were talking about
That's
the
right.
Olympic athlete
That's right.
and everything.
That's
so
right.
people thought we went out of business because every time a sport committee left and formed an NGB, we were stuck there with no money.
Mm-mm.
So about a dozen of us stayed behind, and we started building the base of the pyramid out of our own personal checkbooks. I always say if my wife knew what I spent on AAU back in those days, I wouldn't be married today.
So we'd be referring to your ex-wife.
And a lot of other people did the same thing. Because you ran an event, you lost money, and it was your money that you lost. So we kind of rebuilt the base of the pyramid. Well, along 1996, 97, Disney comes along and says, would you be interested in being the anchor tenant for a concept we have of Disney's Wide World of Sports? Gotcha. Well, it was us and the Atlanta Braves. We're at the groundbreaking. We became the anchor tenant, and we moved our headquarters from Indianapolis down to Orlando, and then eventually onto Disney property.
I would imagine there was those who were like, you're pulling us out of Indianapolis. You're going to ruin the organization. This is going to be the end of us.
Well, there wasn't many of us left back then.
So we keep them all in a room.
Most people went with the MTV, so a lot of us didn't. A lot of us to argue with. But so we got down to Disney, and then all of a sudden we had the profile again, and people started saying, "Oh, AAU's back." Well, we never went away.
Yeah,
we never went away.
But
we've been around since
Disney's got a little bit of a
they got a little bit of juice
in the game.
Yeah, they got
all
a
right.
little
So
juice.
now you're in Orlando, and you have a destination market.
Correct.
That has athletic facilities.
Correct.
Hotels.
Correct.
And people want to go there and spend their vacation.
And a great partner, Disney. I mean,
Yeah.
when we went down there in that year, and we finally started using the sport complex, which now, by the way, is called ESPN Wide World of
ESPN's
Sports,
Wide World of Sports,
because they found out that the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. People of our generation knows what that means, but these kids today have no clue what it is.
But they know what
they
some of
know
their other
ESPN.
media sources. Yeah.
They know
like
ESPN.
ESPN, yeah, sure.
And so when they rebranded it ESPN, Now everybody wants to play there, and so they're great partners.
And you were not blind. You saw that building your national volleyball program.
Yep.
Through
we moved it from Chicago, which I took a lot of heat for.
Yep.
Moved it from Chicago to Des Moines, or Chicago to St. Louis to Des Moines, and then to Disney. And when we got down to Disney, we had 123 teams, and that was 22 years ago. So now we have 2,805.
You moved to Disney. Again, I came in around 94. I remember this move in 98. And I can testify to the part of being a parent and taking my kids to Disney World.
Okay.
Nothing like it.
Yep.
You got my back on this one, daughter?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are some great memories.
Those are great memories.
Yeah.
I mean, Disney delivers on the memories.
Absolutely.
They really do. And so you can see
magic
why
of Disney,
people would want to go and do that. Okay, so now your volleyball program's blowing up. Your secretary, here we come up. The beach volleyball program is certainly growing.
Yep.
And everything's growing beneath you.
Yep.
You know, your other professional career is going fine.
Yep.
You know, a couple of superintendent
Yeah.
gigs, you're doing
Yep.
all right on
Yep.
But fact of the matter is 2014 comes up and you say, I'm running for president of the Amateur Athletic Union.
It happened more like a lot of people from around the country said, we
Roger,
need you to run for president.
Okay.
And I said, I don't know if I want to do that. I have a full-time job.
'Cause you had a full-time job.
As a school superintendent, and I was happy with what I was doing. I loved the school district I was in. My family was happy, and life was good to me. And I mean, a poor kid from Ashtabula being a school superintendent and working in the community that he loves, that's coming a long way.
Right when everything is just right, you're like,
yeah.
oh, well, okay.
Let's
go.
Let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. And so down in Fort Lauderdale.
That was quite a convention.
Quite a convention. It was quite a.
And just from my perspective, being and watching it, it was something else. And I can imagine how the United States elections go too.
Yeah.
I can see where there's a lot going on.
It got a little bit ugly at times, but
I'm
glad I did it. I think we've really moved the needle in the last 4 years. And
so you're elected in 2014, and you certainly started some initiatives, and then reelected in 2018. So you'll serve out that term. But let's go to this. What's your strategy? What's your structure for governing where you got 40 sports, 700,000 athletes? They're spread out over all of these districts. In each of these districts, you certainly have their own operators that want to do their own thing, and they're used to doing things an old way. Some that are doing how do you dive in and govern that?
I think a lot of it, Denny, is you have to almost take a servant leadership approach, because people out there that are volunteering their time to work for you want you to be responsive to them. And it's hard to be responsive to 150,000 people. But I try to answer on my business card is my cell phone, that comes directly to me. On my business card is my email, that comes directly to me. It's not like I have all these administrative assistants running around answering my emails and answering my calls. When you call, I answer. Yeah. And so I've tried to always be responsive to everybody out there in the field, because it may not seem like an important issue to you, but it's important to them.
How did being both a coach and an athlete influence how you manage?
I think you have a little piece of every coach that you've ever played for. I mean, I've always used this line in interviews, and it's probably not a good one, but I've learned more of what not to do than what to do, because some things that coaches have done with me and other athletes, where they baited kids or did things and embarrassed kids, I've learned those are things I never want to do. And so as a school administrator or as an administrator of sport, I've seen enough things done the wrong way that I realize you got to treat people right. Because when you grow up poor and you have nothing, I always tell my kids this: there's one thing you have in life that when you're young and you're poor is your word. So if you lose your word, you lose your whole self-worth. So I'm never gonna blow smoke up your butt. I'm gonna always tell you the truth. My word is always gonna be good. If I say I'm gonna do it, I may not do it to the best of my ability, but I'm going to try to do it, and I'm going to do what I say. And so I guess I always live by the moniker, I want to treat people the way I want to be treated. And so if I treat people with respect, hopefully they'll treat me with respect back.
I wanted to get to about this point before I brought up this is I think you're a product somewhat of Ohio.
Sure.
And certainly of whatever else you have. But the fact is, like, our families have known one another, for a long time now.
Oh, yeah.
And I've always noticed that despite all of your positions, you've always maintained family.
Yep.
It's always been there.
Number
Many
one.
times they're part of it and stuff. And and I purposely did not, want to even talk about your kids until this point, so that it drives home the point of, like, listen to all this other stuff. And he didn't back away from his family while doing this. And I think actually it's part of who you are and where you grew up. But I think it's also just you found a way to make it all work together. And I don't think you would have achieved as much as you did if you didn't spend as much time.
I would agree.
I think it goes both ways with you and your family. I think, all of these,
I passed up some pretty good job opportunities because I didn't want to be away from my family. I mean, when they were fourth grader and they're in that fourth grade play.
That's
and
right.
That fourth grade play is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I wanted to be able to go to it.
Yeah, I got you.
And then, like I told the guys I worked for at the time, I'll work till midnight. Doesn't bother me. But if I have to leave at 2 to go to my son's fourth grade play, I'm going to go. And so I try to treat the people that work for us the same way. Is if your kid's sick, if something's wrong, deal with it. Call me later. Call me later, because nothing we do in this organization or any teaching organization is life or death.
Well, we look back a little bit there, but looking forward.
Yeah.
You haven't just sat on your second term here.
No,
you've been hustling a little bit. You've been getting around a little bit. So just from my own recollection, I know you've been working with or been to Kosovo, Australia, China. What am I leaving off here?
We're Agadir, Africa. Or Morocco.
Which leads me to, congratulations, of course, but elected as president of the Continental America, which would be North and South America for ISF, the International Scholastic
North
Federation.
America, South America, Central America, and the Caribbean islands.
And this ISF is International Scholastic Federation, and they run world championships.
International School Sports.
Schools.
Because in German, school sports is one word. So that's why it's I, just singular, S.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's International School Sports, and they pretty much are responsible to the International Olympic Committee for all high school age sports divisions and competitions.
And so, this is you're globe tracking a little bit. You're getting around.
That's I have to say to myself, that's a pretty big deal. And I didn't expect to win. I really didn't. But it was again, a lot of good people there. We had some good conversations. I think they see the model and the success we've had at AAU.
Right.
And they see the relationship with Disney.
And you think there'll be benefit both ways?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we just concluded the deal with Australia, where they're going to be bringing a lot of their players here in 4 different sports. China, we got a deal going that's kind of in its later stages, where we're going to be providing opportunities for kids over there. We're such a global society now. I mean, it's just
correct, right?
Yeah, and you don't realize how good a job we do at amateur sports until you go to some of these other countries, and we really do a good job in this country.
And they recognize that, and
Absolutely.
but you, to your credit, have recognized what that could help the organization out here in terms of membership, exposure, opportunity to travel.
And the travel part, I'm at an age where I
mean our athletes.
Our athletes,
our athletes.
I'm to a point where I'd rather sit at home and watch games. But I'll tell you, two of the most touching things to me was just recently when I was in Kosovo, and we donated 3 wrestling mats and a bunch of volleyball equipment, track and field equipment, all kinds of equipment. You don't realize how poor some people are until you go to schools and they have no hurdles, and no hurdles in the whole country. They have no volleyball equipment. They're playing with a soccer ball that was just beat to heck. And so we rolled out brand new soccer balls for them and nets and gave it to them. The looks on these kids' faces were just incredible.
And you're planting seeds.
Oh my God!
You're doing what you've always done.
And the other thing was in China. They asked me to speak at Peihua University. The president of the college had me speak to all these kids, and one of the kids asked, and I didn't know if they could understand the thing. They had a translator, but the one kid asked me, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, to be quite honest with you, I really think we can change the world through amateur sports. I really do. I don't think you kids want nuclear war. I don't think you kids want war. No. I don't think you kids want famine. I don't think you want to have a long, happy life. And I got a standing ovation.
What will you define as success? If you're going to look back and you're going to judge yourself, president, CEO,
that's a tough
how would
question.
you define successful 2 terms?
The Browns winning the Super Bowl.
You keep beating me to my questions. That's hilarious.
I know, but
yes,
if you don't
can
know, I'm
understand.
from Cleveland originally, and we got Baker Mayfield. As a matter of fact, I have a tag over there. That life is good with Baker.
I love it.
So I have to break that out later. But the Browns winning the Super Bowl would make me happy because my kids in their lifetime can't understand for the life of them why I'm a Browns fan.
That's funny.
But if you lived during the '60s with Jim Brown and Gary Collins and those guys, Bernie Kosar in a later time. But we did win with LeBron, by the way, before he came to L.A. And so we've had our share of success there. But truly, to answer your question, I guess it's I guess I'll never be content until every kid has an opportunity to participate in sports, because I've worked with kids and I've lived and grew up with kids that never had the opportunity that other kids had because they just didn't have the money. Whether we say it or not, it's expensive to do this stuff now.
It is.
And so there's a lot of kids.
And to keep up.
Yeah, there's a lot of these kids that are just priced out of the market.
Yeah.
So that's why we're trying to work with groups like the Starlings in volleyball that the kids don't have as much, and try to get them participating more and get more of their programs.
And you're
going.
reinvesting in the communities that you visit.
Absolutely. We just, I don't know if you know or not, but we just got named the provider for the President's Council on Physical Fitness.
Well, that's going to
and
reach
Sport.
a tremendous amount of
incredible
young people.
Number of schools, and where they want us to target those Appalachian schools and the inner city schools, and that fits perfectly with what we call our urban initiative. Our we've been talking about what we call our global initiative, where we want to bring the world together through sport. But the urban initiative is we want to make sure every kid has an opportunity to play whatever sport they want to play.
Well, listen, Dr. Goudy, it has been a pleasure to have you in the Dialogue Studios, and it's been a good interview. And I hope you this okay. This go good for you.
This is great.
Let's spread the word.
We got to go back to beach volleyball now.
Yeah, we do. We got to get back to Hermosa for that. Let's keep moving kids forward.
All right, sounds good. Thank
Right
you,
on.
Denny. All right.
Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is supported by the AAU. Find a local event and join at aausports.org. And remember, you can catch your favorite amateur sports live stream, replays, and highlights at ballertv.com. Sports Stories, along with East Bay, supports the Heroes Movement, a nonprofit that bridges the gap from mental or physical therapy to getting strong again through strength and conditioning workouts. This free service is available for any veteran of the United States Armed Forces. Visit heroesmovementusa.org for more information. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is a production of Sports Stories, Inc. and is available on Apple Podcasts and YouTube or wherever you listen and watch. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and give us a review. It really helps spread the word. You can find all our social media links, archives, and other info on our website at sportsstoriespodcast.com. Original music for Sports Stories is courtesy of Lennon Music Productions. Special thanks to the John R. Wooden Course and Wooden's Wisdom. Sports Story staff includes Marley Rice, Teresa Dolan, Bob McCall, Michael Lennon, Sienna Lennon, Brad Lawson, Christine Jimbo, and Jake Downey. And now it's time to go to Coach's Corner, where everyone's favorite 8th grade teacher, Miss Teresa Dolan, reads one of Coach Wooden's favorite poems.
The poem I decided to read is How to Be a Champion by Grantland Rice. You wonder how they do it. You look to see the knack. You watch the foot in action, or the shoulder, or the back. But when you spot the answer where the higher glamours lurk, you'll find in moving higher up the laurel-covered spire that most of it is practice, and the rest of it is work.
Thanks, Miss D. So good. If any one of our listeners would like to read one of Coach Wooden's favorite poems for a future show, go to our website at sportsstoriespodcast.com and click on the Coach's Corner link. From the 1999 Spin Art album, here's the band Venice, and we leave you with The Road to... Kick it out, Book!